Hi, everyone, and welcome to my podcast today. I'm here with my friend Angelina, and who was Miss Alaska in 2018, I believe.
Mhm.
And I'm super grateful to have her on, and she's a super awesome person. And I met her at the Ramdas retreat in Hawaii last winter. Our beautiful teacher behind her. And yeah, so super grateful to have you here. And did you want to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so glad that we finally made some time to do this. I was really just been so thankful for your friendship over the last year. But yeah, my name's Angelina Clapperich. I live up in Alaska. It's a snow day up here today. I work as an elementary school counselor at the moment, and school was canceled today because we got like 2 feet of snow. So this is kind of fun to be able to do this with that a little bit of
Super
extra
fun.
time. But yeah.
Super fun. Yeah, you're the only person from Alaska I've ever met.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. That's kind of funny though. I've never met anyone that's actually from there. But yeah, and let's see, anything else interesting about me? Like I'm finishing up my master's in counseling, so I'm almost done in like a year. My internships will be done, and then I'll be able to continue working as a school counselor, and I'll work towards my license to be a licensed professional counselor, so I can work with like adults and other ages outside of a school as well.
That's awesome. And I'm sure you'll help a lot of people on that
Thank
journey.
you. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming. And so I guess the way we wanted to start today is we're going to talk about your spiritual journey and how you grew up sort of in a certain church and how you that
Mhm.
kind of developed for you through ending up at like these Ramdas retreats the last couple of years and sort of what your experience there was.
Yeah, exactly. And I think did we mention that? Yeah, that's where we met at the Ram Dass retreat last 1 year ago in Maui, which was so amazing. I think that really like helped solidify kind of my new spiritual path, just because I had never really been in a community of people that had
Yeah.
similar like beliefs. I'd been kind of doing a lot of like that research on my own, books and reading and stuff. Did you feel like similarly?
Yeah, I did actually, because I had spent some years leading up to that in like studies and even doing practices on my own and at some local groups, but it was really pretty very transformative and insightful to be with like satsang like sangha like members of the same path and tradition that I've like resonated so strongly with. And I did feel that way, and I feel like even after going to something like that, so many doors like opened up in my life over this past year because of being brought to that retreat. So yes, I would definitely agree with that
Yeah,
statement.
I
And I think
definitely.
it's important because it's a big difference between like doing readings on your own and like learning stuff and like but then being exposed to like a community of others really can like strengthen and grow that a lot and add like a lot of understanding there.
Yeah, exactly. And like both as is important, as you said, like that inner personal work like on your own, but to be able to share that in a community of people. Um yeah, and with that community, there's people like all along the spectrum. Like at the Ram Dass retreat, we met people in their 80s who had been on this journey like for such a good chunk of their adult life, and then so many people at the start of their journey, and to just like be
Yeah.
among those people, it was yeah, so awesome. So so for me, it's let's see, I grew up going to the Catholic church with my mom. It was always just like me and my mom growing up. And I always enjoyed my time in the church. And also I hope that me sharing this, like for anybody who's listening that may have grown up in like the Christian tradition or in other traditions, and like are kind of like shifting in their religious or spiritual beliefs, like I hope it's helpful to like hear someone else's journey. That's why I wanted to share it today. But yeah, I had like a really great experience growing up in my church. Like the priests that I grew up with was great. I never felt like I was forced to go to church, and it felt really good. So I'm thankful for that, because I know not everybody had that experience in their the tradition that they grew up in. But I don't know. I guess like I was very still like, yeah, really into my Catholic faith up until like I don't know. I remember I was like 23, maybe. Yeah, 22, 23. And when I like try to think on like what started to like make kind of a shift, I remember meeting someone. It was a guy, like, again, I was like 22, I was like with a group of friends, and he had like a really unique perspective, and he was like a little bit farther on his spiritual journey. And he introduced me to the Four Agreements, which was definitely my first step in opening my eyes to new ways of thinking. And remind me, have you gotten to read the Four
Mhm.
Agreements?
I have. I actually teach a group on it at a treatment center, and we
Really?
we listen to it and then talk about it, which is
That's
really a
awesome.
blessing. But yes, just this year I read it for the first time.
That's awesome. I would love to do that too. I've been thinking about that, like, especially now that I have like my counseling background and stuff, like it'd be interesting to have a group of people to like work through this with, or a couple other books.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah,
cool.
you definitely could.
We'll have to talk about that, how you do that. But yeah, I remember like that first chapter is so interesting, like the domestication and dream of the planet, and then um and just like how it talks about how we're all light, and like that's the smoky mirror. Um I haven't like looked at that chapter lately, but I just remember it really was like, whoa, I don't know, it helped me realize like it didn't like contradict, like my tradition, like the
Yeah.
Catholic faith. It almost just like added to it and helped me kind of realize that I don't know, like that wasn't the only way to see the world, like through that one lens of like the Catholic faith. Um and so and then it was also cool that like, because it's not like necessarily it's not a Christian book, but there's a couple references to the Bible, which is interesting. Like even like it says where like the word in the beginning, the word was God. What does it say? Yeah. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word is God. And that comes from the Gospel of John in the Bible. And just speaking about like the power of words, right? And I know you and I have talked about that a little bit too, with just sound in general, right? Like yoga,
Sound.
yoga nidra is that like sound yoga, right?
Yeah, sound is like everything. Well, yoga ninja is a form of yoga, but the one I do is nada yoga is like
Nada.
the
That's what I was thinking.
yoga of
Not,
sound.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
been
yeah.
doing the mantra, the invocation for it like a lot now trying to learn it, but basically it says like sound is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, if you have a second, well, of course you have a second.
Yeah. Mhm.
I could read it. It's really
Yeah.
cool because it does talk about it says what it means. Well, it says Nada Brahma Vishwarupa, Nada Hi Sakala Javarupa, Nada Hi Karma, Nada Hi Dharma, Nada Hi Bandhana, Nada Hi Mukti, Nada Hi Shankara, Nada Hi Shakti, Nadam Nadam Sarvam Nadam, Nadam 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 Nadam. And what it means sound is Brahman, the manifestation of the universe. Sound manifests itself in the form of all life. Sound is karma. Sound is dharma. Sound is that which binds. Sound is that which liberates. Sound is the emancipator of all. Sound is the power behind everything. Sound is everything.
Wow.
That's pretty
Wow.
powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And like that's just, you could talk about just that little what you just read for like hours. Um and yeah, yeah, I'm excited to like learn more. I'm just kind of like at the tip of that iceberg of like beginning to understand the power of word and the power of sound. So yeah, that's interesting. And it's just so cool how like all these books and traditions, how they all connect. They're just different ways of like laying out very similar teachings. Like what you just read is definitely resonates with this, and like there's just, yeah, it's all teaching the same stuff, I think, in like
Very similar. Yes.
Very
Yeah.
similar.
Oh, I mean the same. Yes. Like
Mhm.
it's strikingly similar, and then you realize it is like the same, but
Right.
just like in different forms. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, so I remember reading this and it was just like, whoa. And it must have just hit me like it's it's amazing how like different books and people you meet, how they come like just right at the right time. Like I think I was just ready for
Yes.
it at that time as
Yes.
well. And then I remember that I was also introduced to the artist Nako and Medicine for the People, the guy who
Who we
introduced
love.
yeah, introduced me to him as well. And I remember just like that, I don't know, like at that moment, I remember just listening to him over and over and over again, like his older albums, and that like yeah, very spiritual undertones, and a lot of his music. And so okay, so that was like okay, like that next step on that journey. And then so that opened my eyes to some things, and then I started to kind of go down the rabbit hole of like, okay, who's Don Miguel Ruiz? And like, I don't know, and then that kind of introduced me to other people and other videos and other whatever. And then I remember one night watching some Wayne Dyer, like listening to him, and I grew up listening to him a lot with my mom, which is interesting because I feel like almost any spiritual background could listen to Wayne Dyer
Yes.
resonate, right? Like she was viewing it from her very Catholic perspective, and still really resonating. And then there's other people from lots of different backgrounds who also like love what he has to say. And I remember you
Yeah.
said that you definitely listened to him a little bit growing up
Yeah,
as well.
that was how we remember that was like how we figured out. Yeah, no, I didn't listen to him growing up. When I first got clean from drugs, a friend of my dad's was like, "You guys might like this," and it was that "Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life," and me
Mm-hmm.
and my parents started listening to it. But yeah, he was the first person that like opened up my mind. One of the very first, like, and the first modern teacher by far that I like came across that really just like opened up my mind and my spirituality and my understanding, and it was that book, and I would listen to it in the car for like hours and hours for like months on end. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
definitely I can't remember like the order of things like because I remember my mom would have Wayne Dyer on. She'd order his videos and tapes, and he was on PBS and everything. And I remember as a kid, I always, I was like, this feels boring kind of thing. But
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but also it's interesting. It just clicked too for me, the power of like sound. And I wonder, like, even though as like a elementary school aged kid, when my mom would have that on, I was not finding it very interesting, but it's interesting to think about the potential seeds that it planted at that time, even just hearing it and not like intellectualizing it. Like that's a whole other interesting thing.
Yeah. That's really powerful for sure. Like you could
Hmm.
almost I could almost envision like if you were like after your life ended or you were out of your body and you could just see like the cycle of your life, like you would see
Hmm.
those moments as like being pretty profound, even though you might not have caught it like at the time. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. So, and then so I think around that same time, I don't know, I had like a few of his books, but yeah, I came across the one that you were just talking about. Yeah, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, Living the Wisdom of the Tao Te Ching. And so if anyone isn't familiar, there's 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching, which has been around for what, like thousands of years.
Yeah, I think like 2,500 probably
Mhm.
like since
Something
like
like that.
yeah, I think something like that.
And again, this again was like a nice like kind of like it was like this perfect little like both of these books were like again they didn't like feel like they contradicted like the faith that I grew up in, but again just expanded on it because like the Tao, it just it talks a lot about like nature and like the true nature of things. And I guess I just remember like a few of the analogies coming up with like um being like flowing like water, right? And like being open, or like how like so many people can be so like firm in their beliefs, and they're like, I don't want to hear anything else, and they're just so strong in it, and they think that that's the way to be strong. Whereas like the Tao teaches like to be like flexible and fluid like water, and how
Yeah.
that can seem like a weak thing or like a weakness, but when you think about water and the way it's carved valleys and canyons and rock and riverbeds, and how the ability to be flexible, like, is powerful and strong.
Yeah,
So
it goes against like everything that kind of like we're usually taught and stuff. And that was why I loved it so much. I was like, well, it was like so freeing to hear that
mhm.
philosophy. I used to just drive around like in ecstasy for hours and just listen to it because it was so much about yielding and about
Mhm.
he would say things like everybody else is strong and oh I alone am like dumb and weak or like floating on the wind. And yeah, it was so powerful. It was like uh different than anything I had ever like been exposed to before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder, as like an aside for a second, I was just thinking about like these books that we've come across and these teachers and how much they've transformed our life. And I just feel so thankful that like we live in a time where we have access to these things so easily. I always think about people who, even just 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, like it was so much harder to come across like teachings. Like you had
Oh,
to find, like, I'd be like, "Hey, do you know anyone that can teach me about yoga or spirituality?" Like, "Oh yeah, I think this person in this town knows about that. You should find them." Or, like,
yeah,
this.
people would have to like leave their families and like go to a lot of the things we learn now. You'd have to like go live in a temple to find out. And some parts of the world wouldn't even have a lot of the different things. Yeah, I know it's such a blessing that we really have now no reason. Like those two books that you show there are like so widely available and so mainstream and so non really dogmatic in any
Mhm.
way and so powerful that just ordering one off Amazon could change your life in like a matter of a couple weeks if you would read
Yeah,
it, which is like such a blessing. Like if you were living in middle America in like 1800, other than the Bible, you probably couldn't really get, like, anything, you know?
right, totally.
And a lot of parts of
Totally.
the world for a long time, even, like, those sacred texts that we have, like, there were points in time where people had to copy those by hand and like only certain people
Mhm.
had access to them. And yeah, and people really, what I've been studying more, like people really went through a lot, which is a little off topic, like to
It's
be
okay.
able to transmit those teachings and like to be able to keep those things alive through like wars and empires and like persecution, just so that the people after them would still have access to it.
That's a very good point. I can't imagine. Yeah, like, I mean, come on, like, it wasn't that long ago that you're right, all of this would have had to be handwritten.
Hmm.
And you're right, like, in the midst of, like you said, war or whatever crazy stuff that goes on, like, for them to, like, "Okay, we have to keep this, like,
Yeah, it would have been
safe,"
like a big deal.
to, like, yeah, yeah, and I think we take that for granted a little bit now, just like, "Oh, yeah, all these great books," I don't know, like, when you
Yeah.
really think about, like, how it's not that long ago that this information would have been so hard to get your hands on.
I mean, it makes me think of like the Gnostic, not like that Nag Hammadi scriptures that I sent you guys the quote from, which
Mm,
I read. I actually, Nikki Walton had sent me that, but it made me pull my book out. But those are like the origin teachings of the Gnostics of Christianity. And like those were missing for 2,000 years until they
mm.
got found in the 1960s in like mason jars in the Egyptian desert. And that just shows
Cool.
so, and they're so deep and profound and like stuff that was not put in the Bible. And they were just missing. Like nobody would have ever known again about any of that. So it's just
Mhm.
crazy over the course of like what these people's whole tradition was and its power was just completely lost for 2,000 years. And if those hadn't been found, it just never would have arisen again. You know, it's just
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
That is crazy. Yeah, you'll have to remind me more about that. I wonder. Yeah, I'd love to learn more about that. That's really interesting. Like,
Yeah.
about those particular texts that were found.
They're really cool, and yes, I do wanna read before we continue.
Yeah.
Let me just read like, what I had shared with everyone from the text, because I shared it, 1, because it was about the sound, and that's why she
Mm,
sent it to me, and 2, it's interesting because this is actually a form of Christianity, but it has teachings that seem more akin to, like, Eastern and that seem
Mhm.
almost deeper than what you'd find in the Bible. So it's interesting for people to realize that like this is actually part of true Christianity too.
Yeah,
Because it sounds so much different. So like what
yeah.
this says, it says, I cast a sound into the ears of those who know me, and I am inviting you into the exalted perfect light. Moreover, as for this light, when you enter it, you'll become glorified. You will become gloriously glorious, the way you first were when you were light. And I hid myself in everyone and revealed myself within them. And every mind seeking me longed for me, for it is I who gave shape to the all when it had no form. And I transformed their forms into other forms until the time when a form would be given to the all. It is through me that the voice originated, and it is a word by virtue of a sound. It was sent to illumine those who dwell in darkness. I am a light that illuminates the all. I am the light that rejoices in my brethren, for I came down to the world of mortals.
Wow.
Like
I
that's
don't remember
pretty.
reading that. I must have lost that in the midst of our
Oh, you
text
didn't remember
exchange.
reading it?
No,
Oh, good
wow.
thing I brought it up. That's pretty powerful, right?
That really is. There's like so many lines that we could like dissect, but one that stood out was something like I hid myself in in like all these different forms or something like that.
Yeah, it said I hid myself in everyone
Mm,
and revealed myself within them, and every mind seeking me longed for me, for it is I who gave shape to the all when it had no form.
whoa.
And that sounds like something you would find maybe like in the Bhagavad Gita or something, but you wouldn't really
Mhm.
think of finding that in like Christianity, like in the Bible.
Right.
But like they have the same teachings. That's just teachings that were left out of like the manuscript of the Bible.
Yeah, yeah. And then, like you said, that just makes you really think about the original intentions behind what Jesus was teaching and how that's all been just maybe either misconstrued or some things have been left behind or forgotten. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about that recently too, even with like Ramdas and how like he only left his body just a couple years ago, and we've been able to interact with people who like lived and taught alongside him, but and thankfully with so many recordings of his teachings, like hopefully his teachings won't like be misconstrued in 100, 500 years or whatever. But I can see how that can easily happen,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
especially just with time, like, and nobody necessarily with like ill intentions and like, oh, I'm gonna confuse everyone, like to like not have the true teachings. But I think that, I don't know, as time goes on,
It
it's hard.
yeah, like it definitely a blend of like some people and right. It's well known that like some church people like the Romans did manipulate and choose what would be in the Bible. But you're right, like the passing down is which we don't have time to probably get into
Mhm.
here, but what I've been studying in the ancient Sumerian tradition, which is like the oldest recorded civilization of currently of mankind and the oldest
Hmm.
written tablets and the oldest written religious tablets, they have the same stories as stories in the Bible and such, but they're a little bit different because the natural interpretation over so much time. And there's ones that they have that are not in the Bible, but it's just interesting, like you said, because teachings change. And that's why these Gnostic scriptures are so precious because they were found in their original state. And these people worked like scrupulously hard for like the last 50 years to translate them
Wow.
and pass them down. And it's some of them were lost because when the people found them in the desert, they didn't know and they were burning them to start fires, like
Oh
just to
my
stay
god.
warm at night. Yeah, like so we don't even know what we lost. They didn't burn tons of them, but they were burning them, and then somebody brought it to town and like showed somebody who knew that this. They were like, "This must be something." Like, let me don't burn any more of these. Like, let
Wow.
me. But yeah, it's just so it was like found just like that.
That's crazy. That really
Yeah,
is.
like just to think that something like so profound as that, like in the 1940s was just in one mason jar or a couple, not one, but like in a couple jars. And somebody was like, should I even keep this or should I just like light it on fire or what,
Right.
because they
Yeah,
couldn't read it.
it's crazy. I know. I know. So yeah, so we live in a great day and age where we got like a lot of stuff right at our fingertips. I got so many books here that I'm so thankful for that have opened my eyes to a lot of things. So I wonder, like I'm thinking about like my little story of my kind of spiritual journey. Okay, I think like I was kind of like digging more into Wayne Dyer and Taoism, and then as I was listening to another Wayne Dyer talk, he was mentioning about his friend Ram Dass and how he was like a great
Mm.
teacher for him and a great friend to him. And I remember it was like up late one night listening to that. This was maybe 7 years ago or something. And I remember looking up on my phone like Ram Dass. And boom, like that just got me on this whole another path
Mm.
of listening
What
to
a
videos.
moment.
And I know, and then ordering books. And yeah. So and I'm just so thankful. And it's funny to hear like when we both were on the retreat last year, it was both of our first times, and like hearing everybody's stories of like what brought them to the retreat. Um, and yeah, because I know just for me, I don't know, after hearing him speak and reading some of his books, I just when I heard there was a retreat, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'd never really been on any like sort of spiritual retreat like that before. And I thought, you know what? If it has to do with Ram Dass, it's gotta be great, and it
Yeah.
was, obviously.
That was a big step. And it's crazy because it's like every person there, especially all of us who's like first times it's
Hmm.
like a divine thing that you don't even realize that's happening that's bringing you there. And
Totally.
same with finding Ramdas or finding any teaching is like such a unfolding in like one's evolution of consciousness and such a like whatever kind of like when the student is ready, the teacher appears like more profound than we even realize because it's like the blessing of many lifetimes to be exposed or to be able to be opened up to and see something
Yeah,
like that.
that's true. And then as you just said about like over many lifetimes, that made me think about how I'm not sure how it's kind of shifted, but I guess, growing up, I certainly never really believed in reincarnation. Um, that's not something that like I was taught in the Catholic Church, but I don't know, as I hear Ram Dass talk about it and as I learn more about it, it just seems to really make sense to me, or just really feels right, the idea of and even like scientifically, I feel like it makes sense. Like from a science perspective, like it's like so hard to put into words. So much of this is hard to put into words because it's like impossible to describe fully. Um but the idea of like energy is neither created nor destroyed. Like whatever energy that exists in the universe at this moment has always existed.
Yeah.
And so when we like this energy that inhabits these bodies, when this body dies, it's not like that energy dies, right? Like, so I think that
Hmm.
when I look back on why I
Yeah.
why I like resonate more with reincarnation now, it just makes sense to me that that energy would continue to exist. And then I don't know what that, I bet you've maybe learned more about some of this than I have, but like I don't know, like that energy exists and then at some point like takes another form, and like a physical form, um yeah, that just seems to really make sense to me.
And if you ever read in The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, at the very end, the prophet says he talks about leaving his body and he says, then I'll rest a little while on the wind until this longing takes another body.
Ooh,
And it's
nice.
a really powerful book. Yeah. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, even not just the Eastern traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism, but even Egyptian and Atlantean and ancient Sumerian knew about reincarnation, and the Native Americans, and even the Christians, and even those Gnostic books I was just talking about. talk heavily about reincarnation, and that's probably why a lot of them were not. But so does the Bible in places that put through like in the book of Solomon. Solomon says like having good. He didn't use the word karma, but like having done good deeds. He's like I was born into like a clean and pure body, and there's cases
Mm,
like that, and there's a case where Jesus's disciples ask him, "Is this man blind because of his parents' sin or of what he did in a past life?"
mm,
And there's the prophet Elijah who came back uh, as John the Baptist, and even when they asked Jesus, "Wasn't Elijah supposed to come back?" He's like, "He did. Didn't you see John the Baptist?" So there's still some things in the Bible that like got through got through in that
yeah, that's a
sense.
very good point. That's so interesting. Because that's another thing that I'm like excited to continue to learn about on my spiritual path is like, so I have a lot of friends who more strictly align with the Christian faith and how it's taught today. And like, but I'm excited to like continue to look at some like passages in the Bible and recognize how they can still really align with like these new spiritual like teachings that I'm coming across or that I'm learning about
Hmm.
because I don't think they have to contradict each other.
No, no, they don't. Like in
Yeah.
in 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 the magical tradition of ceremonial magic, they say that the Bible is the greatest book of magic ever written for those that can understand it. But yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I know for me, studying it in this last couple months, just getting into more with the Gnostics and the Bible itself has been so much different than it was for me in times. Oh, even over the past years, I've read the New Testament a lot, but because of what I've been practices I've been doing, I've understood it now, started to in a much more deeper and profound way where it's like, whoa. But
yeah.
but in response to what you said, yes, I would say scientifically, it also only makes perfect sense that consciousness is never dissolved and that it continues on and is way more intricate than we might sometimes think and
Yeah.
profound, and that it has always been here and will always be here.
Yeah. Like, and that just that statement right there made me think of when Thich Nhat Hanh left his body just like within the last year or so.
Yeah, I think like last in the summer
Yeah. And I remember I
or
get
earlier, maybe.
like yes, yeah, not too long
It
ago.
was it was when I was in teacher training for yoga, and it was like the second month, so it was probably like February or March.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember like hearing about that and I have some pictures of him in here with me. And I get and like I remember like one of the teachings that they like brought up of his when he left his body was like what was it? It was like death is like a cloud,
When he
right?
says clouds never die.
Yeah, clouds
He said
never die.
a cloud never dies,
Yeah,
that it
some
only
yeah,
transforms.
right, exactly. Exactly. And I remember like that just is such a beautiful analogy of like you imagine yeah, like a cloud that you can see in its like physical form, like this puffy white cloud. But then when it dissolves, as you said, like the water molecules and whatever it was that existed there, it's not like it's gone. They're still there. You know, it just is in a
Hmm.
different form. And then at some point, it may condense again together to create what looks like another cloud.
Yes. Whoa.
Yeah, but yeah, so like that's like a perfect analogy for us and our own like consciousness that lives within us, right? Like it takes this what looks like this form for now, like what we can like perceive, but then it will dissolve when we leave our body and but still exists, even though
Hmm.
you can't touch it or see it with these five senses, and then it will come back into another form at some point.
Yes, that's what I felt when Thich Nhat Hanh. We were at teacher training, and this girl said over Zoom that he had passed away, and the teacher ended the class immediately. And the longtime son song that you sing at the end of Kundalini Yoga, we he said, "Let's sing this to send him his way on." And when we did that, I immediately felt his energy that and the intuition came to me that
Mm,
said he's everywhere now, and you
mm,
could feel that, like, when he left the body, he just, like, spread out through everything, and I started
mm,
crying, and you could feel the love, which is interesting because they say often when a saint or something dies, they're like, now they're able to be more effective now that
mm.
they're not constrained in a body any longer, which is
That's a good
interesting
point.
because I
Yeah.
felt how he was just like all expansive.
Mhm. That's beautiful. I wonder here, I have his picture right here. I should bring it over here. Here he is.
Mm,
Mhm.
yeah, how beautiful.
Yeah. I'm not much of a drawer at all. Somewhere in here, I remember when he left his body, I tried to like sketch him.
You
Like,
did?
yeah, I never ever really
Uh,
draw. I don't know where it is at the moment. I thought I had it in here, but this is my little. But yeah, by the way, this is my closet. If anybody didn't know that, I see my clothes are right there and above me, but this is like my little
I
sacred space.
I love how you have that giant round ass
I
right
think I
there.
have Ramdas, and then I have over here. Oh, let's see if I can. There's the Dalai Lama.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
And then behind the screen right now, I have a few other like pictures and things. Yeah, yeah, I really like this space. And speaking of the Dalai Lama, like I want to try to it's like I've been a goal for like quite a few years. I want to try
To
to get
meet him?
to I want to meet him, or either like I mean, it would be pretty amazing to actually like meet him individually, but or just like be in his presence, like in a crowd, like in
Mm-hmm.
northern India or something, like when he gives a talk or something.
Yes, we should go to Dharmasala one day. I want to go. I won't be
Yes.
able to this time, but I really want to go there, like where he lives up in northern
Yes.
India. Yeah.
Exactly. Me
I mean,
too.
I know he travels, but it would also be really cool to go to where he lives.
Yeah, I've been kind of keeping track. They have like his little almost like tour schedule like online, like of where he speaks and stuff. And for the
Hmm.
last couple of years, due to COVID and due to him being a lot older now, I don't think he really is traveling much outside of Dharamsala
Oh,
like at all. 'Cause I think he used to come to the United States quite a bit actually, like you
hmm.
know, in the past and all over the world. But now I think we got to go to him. So,
Mm,
but that would be really cool.
certainly.
Because I mean, there's just so many incredible spiritual masters and teachers who, you know, it would be really such a blessing to see them while they're still in their body.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. We don't realize how. Yeah, I mean, we do, but like how much of a blessing it would be. You're right. You're right.
yeah.
Very profound.
And when speaking of him, I don't know how like the Dalai Lama was definitely someone that like early on in my kind of expansion out of just Christianity, like he was someone that came up. I don't know how exactly. I think maybe someone recommended the book the the Way of Happiness, or it's something about happiness
Or
by the
the
Dalai
art of
Lama.
happiness, I think.
Yes, I think so. The Art of Happiness. Also, I see his book I have right here, Living Buddha, Living Christ. Oh, that's Thich Nhat Hanh. That's Thich Nhat Hanh. I need to get into that one as well. But anyway, um, what I think what I was getting at with him is just I feel like a pull to like be like to learn from him and to try to meet him. And also, it's just so interesting when you think about like the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and how he's the 14th reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, and how for the first 13 no one outside of Tibet had any access to them, to my knowledge, really,
Hmm.
basically, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, not
I think
only
so.
just everyone was just it was just totally secluded to Tibet, and like, you know, no foreigners were like really brought into Tibet, and obviously with technology, like there was no like you know like recordings of any of the previous Dalai Lamas speaking or anything. So I just think it's so unique, like this particular um incarnation of the Dalai Lama, how he's been able to just reach so much of the world, which no other Dalai Lama ever has. Right.
Yeah, actually, that's insanely profound because it's like that's insanely profound because all of a sudden, right when Tibet gets like persecuted by the Chinese and the monks like in prison and all these people killed and they had to flee the Dalai Lama and his people to northern India. But all of a sudden, at that same time, he just explodes this Tibetan tradition all
Mhm.
around the world that was in this little country, but that was
Mhm.
known for being so powerful and profound.
Mhm.
And it was obviously the time through those sad circumstances, but also the time for it to just to come out into the world like that, which is
Yeah.
really astonishing now that you made me realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, exactly. And just for fun, I rewatched the movie 7 Years in Tibet recently, which I don't know if you've watched it. It's with Brad Pitt, and
I have not.
it was like made in like the early 90s. And it's actually really interesting. I It's like a cool depiction because it's based on a true story of this climber, mountain climber, who long story short, ended up in Tibet and became friends with the Dalai Lama when he was only like 10 years old. And like he was young, and they like learned from each other, and it like they say like that they're still like in touch to this day, like the Dalai Lama and this climber Heinrich Harrer. And so it I just enjoy the movie because it's like they did a lot of research into like what Tibet looks like, and it's like a really cool way to actually see in a cinematic way like what Tibet may have looked like, and how hard it was for people to get in, and then it also shows like when the Chinese start to like force their way into Tibet and how that all happened. So yeah, it's interesting.
Hmm. That's super interesting.
Yeah, how are
I'll
you
have to
doing
watch it.
on time, by the way? We still have a little bit of time left.
Yeah, tell us I know yeah, tell us more about your story.
Sure. Well, it's funny. I think I don't know if I have too much else, I guess. When it comes to like my journey, I think I kind of left off with discovering Ramdas. And then yeah, I remember, yeah, that was just like 6, 7 years ago. And then it was about 5 years ago when I became Miss Alaska. And
Was that
and
right? Was it 2018?
yeah, it was like summer of 2017 into 2018, so like overlap those 2 years.
Okay.
And and it was interesting, you know, maybe because I was definitely like reading a lot about Buddhism at that time and a lot more about the Dalai Lama.
Really?
Yeah, and reading a lot about compassion. Like that word compassion was just standing out so much. And and that's why I chose my like all the girls that compete in the Miss America program, they choose like a platform message to speak about when they travel. And like my friend right now is our current Miss America. She's from Alaska, and her so she's been traveling all over the country and the world. Her platform is about Special Olympics because she grew up in that program, and her brother has Down syndrome, and she's just been really like inclusive with people with disabilities. But my platform was about the importance of compassion. And I remember, I know a long time ago, I gave you one of my bracelets, which I still give away. I brought to the retreat with me this year. And it says, yeah, be compassionate because every person fights a personal battle. And so that was just because I
Mm.
remember I kind of grew up doing pageants, and then I like stepped away for a while once I was like 19 maybe. And I was just like, oh, I don't know, it wasn't feeling really good for me. And I was just thinking it felt kind of superficial, and it felt like too much like appearance based. And I just was like, "Ah, I don't know if I want to like continue to be involved with that." But then I remember I was like going on like once you're 24, you're not at that time you weren't allowed to continue like to compete anymore. So I was like getting to be like that age, and I was like, okay, am I going to give it another try? And I remember thinking to myself and having conversations with friends and family and thinking, if I was to win, I would have this really unique platform where I would be able to travel and speak, and people will be like, "Oh, Miss Alaska, I want to hear what she has to say." Like you're just like
Mhm.
given this little like status almost for like a little period of time, and you can like choose to do something really good with it. And I was like, I could be like this kind of ambassador for like compassion for a year. And so I decided to compete again, and I won. And so and then yeah, this like I remember during that whole year how like my message and how I would kind of explain the importance of compassion, how it really shifted from during that whole year. Like the more I would speak about it,
Mm.
I just kind of would present the idea differently. And actually, not until this moment, bringing this up in the context of like my spiritual journey, it's really interesting to think about how much of a role that really might have really did play, I guess, in my spiritual path. Like to spend a year really digging into compassion and trying to like explain it to people. And I remember, there'd be like some resistance every now and then. It was received generally very well by most people, because they all said like, yeah, every person fights a personal battle, like everybody's got their own stuff they're going through. But some people are like, oh, compassion, like, I don't know, it's interesting. Like, does everybody really deserve compassion? Or I remember like, and it was good to have like some challenge every now and then, to like really try to express why I felt compassion was important for all beings and all, yeah, like the earth, animals, people.
That's a really I bet you did embody it more over time. That's a really powerful sadhana, a very powerful practice in itself. And realizing that you got that compassionate from the Buddhist tradition or from the
Hmm.
Dalai Lama, because they instead of the word love, they always use the word compassion.
Yeah.
And then you like shared that out through there, which is beautiful. And I love that you brought those. I wore your bracelet every day, and then I made it as an offering for you in India at the spot where Ramdas met Maharaji at the little temple, at the very spot they met. Yeah.
Thank you. I need to send you another one or a couple.
Yeah, you should send me more.
I will.
But
Um,
that was a good place to put it, I felt like.
Yes, thank you. By the way, yeah, I know I showed you earlier, but you were so kind. Like Alex sent me these beautiful things from India. There's Maharaji and Hanuman, and the mala I've been holding was from
Ah,
you. So thank you
that's
again.
awesome. Yeah, I think I got those at Kainchi. Yeah, at Kainchi down. Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
So thank you. But yeah, it was interesting to kind of tie those pieces of my life together, because even sometimes I still think of them as being like really separate, like that pageant world and then my spiritual world. But there really was like that connection, and I definitely did deepen my understanding of compassion, and was of service throughout that year. Like I talked with like people, like elderly individuals in senior homes, and like tons of like young kids at schools, and everybody in between. um and got to bring it like to Miss America, and I was like in the top 15 at Miss America and got to talk about it there. And
Yeah.
you never know where those like seeds were planted. And I remember for years after, like people would still, and even now sometimes I'll run into people and they'll say like, oh, I still have your bracelet sitting here, or a couple people still wear them and like all the white letters have rubbed off and they're just like blue. And it's like, and they're like, I still look at it and think about compassion. And so I'm really
Wow.
thankful that that resonated with people.
That's really powerful. Yeah. I love that. That's
So
really powerful.
yeah. And so now I just feel like I'm been just like ripped wide open to like all these different like spiritual traditions and beliefs. And I remember for a little period of time I felt like a little resistance to like Christianity in a way, which is kind of weird saying that now because I don't feel that now. But it was just like it felt so like kind of it felt more like rigid and strict, and like this is the one way to view spirituality. And I remember, but I just very quickly realized that all these spiritual traditions, like the underlying teachings are all the same, and they're just different ways of conceptualizing them and teaching them, and that's the beauty of them. Like, I mean, different ways of speaking and different teachers, the way they say it, like it's going to resonate with people differently, right? Like some people, like with Ram Dass and his psychology background and the way he speaks about things, that really resonates with some people, but not everybody. And then there's, all sorts of other teachers that maybe other people resonate with more, and that's great. Um, so, but nobody's like right nor wrong necessarily. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big I like that because a lot of people think that when I've noticed in being involved in Eastern traditions and paths, sometimes when people get into that or start on that, it's because they have like a big Christian resistance or
Right.
distaste, or they start to like bash it and this and that. But really that's not the way either, like you said, because you don't want to like be averse or pushing away to anything. But also then you realize that Jesus and those teachings are all there too and are all perfect and pure. I mean, like at their essence of what he was teaching.
Yes.
But it just depends on view and interpretation and understanding. And since we're in a primarily Christian culture, you're going to see like many people that are very dogmatic about their Christian beliefs. And then sometimes if people don't agree with that, then they throw out the whole thing. But if you were in India, you would see people that are very dogmatic about their Hindu beliefs.
Totally.
So people out here are like, "Oh, well, it's way more open." But you would find the same thing
Yeah.
there, like you'd find purists that also would tell you this is the only way. So it just is depending like what you're searching for and how you find, like for me and like what you're saying is if you're actually searching for your soul, not like through your mind or through your like analytical mind, then you look for how it resonates with your heart and what
Mhm.
helps you on your journey, and you don't really worry about uh like some biases that you might not like that other people share in that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
I've
and
I've definitely reminded myself of that. I think at first when I was feeling that aversion a bit towards Christianity, and I was just reminding myself like exactly what you said. Like there's people of every religious tradition that are more strict or dogmatic in their beliefs, or um and as humans, we aren't perfect, obviously, and in every spiritual tradition there's going to be people who maybe are like mean spirited or whatever, like in every tradition. And
mhm,
so it's like easy to, like you said, like to think
like
like, oh,
yeah.
those people over there, like the Eastern tradition, oh, like you said, they're so much more open, they're all like so loving. And it's like, well, there's I don't know, all kinds of people in every tradition, and so
Yeah. Like when I was in India, there was like a protest, a huge protest a couple towns over by the Muslims because like the Hindu governor was like bashing Muhammad, the prophet. So like
mm,
there so everywhere has like that stuff going on, you know. But yeah, definitely. But yeah, it just depends. Like I found that there was a pastor on Facebook named Greg Locke who I just followed a little bit. I didn't really like follow him. I didn't really know, but like I seen he had a big following, so I was like following his Facebook. And then I seen he's like a big pastor that tours out here. I don't know what's like sect of Christianity, but
mhm.
then I seen he was like doing book burnings and having people just like burning thousands of books. And then I seen him at a library and he's like, all these books are witchcraft. And it was like books like The Power of Now and stuff like that.
Wow.
And just anything that said anything that wasn't like strictly Christian. He's like, we should burn
Mm,
all these. So like, which obviously I don't resonate with whatsoever. But just like that's yeah, just things to be noticed about. Like, because if somebody sees that, then they might think like, oh, that whole religion is a bunch of crap. But I don't
mhm,
see it like that. I'm just like, okay, like it's sad that this person with this huge platform is like thinking this way, but like whatever, you know, and there's nothing I could do about that. But that doesn't mean I don't love Jesus and can't like resonate with Christ's teachings. That kind of thing is what I was.
totally. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking about, I don't know, like, because most people in my life are Christian or grew up Christian. Um, and how sometimes I don't necessarily speak about a lot of these things. And I just like if they choose to talk about Christianity, then I like kind of like talk about I don't know, like because most of the things I talk about I do resonate with, you know, a lot of Jesus's teachings. Um, but it's interesting, like, I don't know, sometimes I don't know. I need to learn to be a little bit more open, I think, about my beliefs. Cause I don't know, I think I tell myself like, well, sometimes it's hard for me to speak about it because I'm still kind of like learning. I feel like I'm so new on this journey. Like sometimes it's hard for me to like verbalize how what I do believe now. But also I think there's part of me that is like a little nervous about how people are gonna react or if it's gonna harm our friendship in some way or something. So I thought about that even coming on like to talk with you today, like if any like my friends or family like would end up watching this, like I don't think
Mm,
a lot of them necessarily know about some of my feelings about a lot of these topics. So who knows?
yeah.
It's interesting. Like,
Yeah, that is interesting. And thank you for
yes,
coming and having the courage to talk with me. And also, but the first thing you said, I think you should, share when with people and when you feel like it's right, because everything you've said on here since we've been talking has been like super powerful and beneficial and stuff. So
thank you.
like
Thank you.
like definitely people would love to hear.
It's harder
Um
when it's because you like are just you kind of get it, you know, like we're on such a specific path. Whereas even I've been seeing my own like counselor for the last couple of months and going to like my own therapy, which has been amazing. And when I got back from the most recent Ram Dass retreat, I was trying to like verbalize to her some of the things that like I learned and that I want to carry into my life. And she was super kind and open, but I like it was hard for me to like explain it and I could tell like that she's just not quite like on the same path. And so like I was like trying to explain it and I don't know, it felt like messier. but
yeah.
but it's okay.
It is harder sometimes depending on the person and situation, and yeah, certainly. I
Yeah,
trust me, I've been through that many times.
I'm sure. Yes. Yeah, I know
I
it's weird. Like normally in conversations, and maybe as a counselor too, I like to focus on the other person. Most of the time I prefer to like listen. So like part of me wishes like that you could like share more on like right now, but I appreciate that, I know that this was kind of like you interviewing me a little bit
Mhm.
more, which was like new for me, but it was fun.
Yeah,
I know you
thank
have
you
so
so
much to
much.
offer.
You have so much to offer. Thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, this was so fun. It
I know.
was really fun. So there's a time to kind of wrap it up.
Yeah, certainly. Um, do you have any last things that you wanted to say?
Hmm. I don't know. Man, there's just so many other things that we could get into. Whenever we talk, there's just like, oh, like it's infinite amount of things that we could get into. But I think the bottom line is I don't know, again, for people maybe that are like listening, to like think about just like, yeah, like exploring and just like really listening to your heart and like what resonates with you because I don't know, it's like hard to describe, but just like as I opened these books and heard these words, it just all felt so good
Hmm.
and resonated with me really deeply, and that's why it feels so good, and um why I don't feel like any like guilt for like leaving the religion I grew up with. I don't know, it feels right, it feels really good, and I think that people need to really listen to
Hmm.
that and like feel what feels right, and for some maybe adhering to a more strict religious tradition, maybe that's what their path is, and that's totally fine too, right?
Yeah,
you know
certainly.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so like not everybody has to feel like they have to be open to all these things, but I mean there's important to love everyone, even others of other religious backgrounds, but yeah, everybody has their own path, and that's totally cool. So I appreciate the opportunity to share mine, and I'm excited for maybe, who knows, another year from now we can do another one of these, and who knows where we'll both be on our journey at that time.
We certainly could.
Yeah,
Thank
that'd be
you.
fun. Yeah, so thank you for putting this good stuff out in the world.
Thank you.